We're in Oslo and it's late November, so as you'd expect, it's cold. Really properly cold. It's wet and it's blustery too, but if ever there was a boat designed to look after us in conditions like this, this is probably it. In the wake of the award-winning Marex 440, we've come here to Oslo to sea trial this, the deeply impressive Marex 390. Before we jump on board and warm ourselves up, let's just take a look at the external decks because they really are quite interesting. If I make my way towards the back end, you'll see that there are similarities here with the 440, and there are certainly stylistic similarities as well. This is interesting, this little teak-lined ledge at the back end just above the waterline, so you can plant a foot on there and operate lines, grab rails. Very practical, that. And this is interesting too. I'll just jump on board this swim platform and take a look at these various teak-lined boxes. As I say, you'll see something very similar on the 440. If I lift this port one, you'll see we've got plenty of space there for your fenders, for your lines, provision there for a stern anchor as well, which you very often see on Nordic boats. Plenty of volume inside this one too, and beautifully lined, I have to say. And moving over to the starboard side, again, good volume. That one's drained, and here of course is a gas locker, because in common with a lot of Norwegian boats, this one is spec'd with a gas stove, but of course you can go for electric instead, in which case you'll need to spec the generator. And here's your shore power, a little cutout there so you can run the cable without fouling that lid. What's particularly interesting here though is that unlike the 440, we got a little receptacle in the deck here. You just unscrew that, pop your table leg in there. You can set up a table and sit yourself there for your morning coffee facing aft over the water without even having to enter that cockpit. And that is a wonderful cockpit actually. We'll take a look at that in a second, but first we'll make our way up onto the starboard side deck and make our way forward to the bow. As we do so, it's interesting to note that these are relatively narrow side decks. They're symmetrical, so about 29 centimetres wide on either side. And that's not huge, but they don't want it to be. It's big enough because they want to preserve the majority of that beam for use on the inside, and that makes loads of sense. And as we go up onto this side deck, it's also worth pointing out we've got a good handy rail here to keep yourself feeling nice and safe. But on future models, they'll be extending this rail right the way across to meet the port one, with a little gap in the centre there for the camera. And as we get up here and make our way forward, this top rail, that's joined by a really nice elevated peripheral guardrail here, comes right up round about your kind of mid-thigh and keeps rising as you go forward. And as we reach the point of the skipper's side door, where there's a little side gate here, well, not quite a gate, a gap in the railings so you can step ashore. Particularly handy if you're single-handed helming. And this is particularly handy if you're single-handed helming too. Plenty of rails for tying off points. Here's a cleat as well with an easy reach, and a little space here for your lines. So really useful, very well thought out that. And I'll be saying that quite a lot as we make our way around this boat. The lighting's very pleasing as well. Just lighting up the deck. And under here, beneath these teak rails for the island sunbed, we've got a bit of underlighting there as well, little LED strips for ambient light. This is beautifully done as well, a couple of cup holders there again in teak, and it's simplistic, yeah, but it is quite pleasing the way it's been done. We've got a little bit of elevation for your head there, which is nice and comfortable. And also these cushions, in common with those on the 440, well, they're buoyant, so you can just chuck them overboard and use them as lilos. And as for this forepeak itself, well, as you can see, it's particularly broad. And I mentioned that stern anchor aft, and that's because a lot of people in this part of the world, they like to nose into the rocks and use a stern anchor. So of course we've got a nice broad step through forepeak here. If I pop the camera over the top, you'll see that we have the anchor mounted on the stem. And if we open this up with my very, very chilly fingers, this might take a little while. There we are. You'll see that we also have a little ladder fitting that flips out and over the bow there, just to make it all that much simpler if you do want to step off from the bow onto the beach or onto the rocks. But that's quite enough of that. I feel like I've lost all sensation in my fingertips here. Let's go and get ourselves into the warmth of that cockpit. But actually, I'd better be professional as we do so, walk down this port side deck, because there are a couple of things to notice here too. We've got a really good size of sunroof, manually operated and very easily done. We'll take a closer look at that in a second. Another little break in the railings here on the port side. Another little hatch for your lines. And I have to say, even though these side decks are relatively narrow, they're perfectly safe, perfectly navigable. They feel very secure. And up on the rooftop here, we've got a solar array totaling about 660 watts, so that's particularly useful. And we'll make our way further aft, and as we come round onto the swim platforms, well, you can see why Espen at Marex is talking about extending these rails, just to make your way inboard a bit more securely if the seas are a little lively. And when we get down here, the access point is slightly offset to the starboard side. I'll just lift these canvases out of the way, and at last, here we are in the warmth and shelter of this rather lovely aft cockpit. As you can see, this cockpit is quite similar to the 440. We have a lovely big square space lined on all sides with seating. Particularly secure for family users, of course, because we've got these mouldings right round the back end. Nice and safe, nice and secure. Feels particularly secure on a day like today with the canvases erected. They, of course, in a fairly traditional Marex style, come out of mouldings tucked inside the back end of the superstructure here. But while we're talking about the canvases, it's also worth noting, if I just undo that zip and poke the camera out, that they fold over a little lip here, just to keep them really taut. On a day like today, when it's a bit blustery and wild, you really need that, and they're doing a great job. They're nice and quiet, no flapping about in the wind. But this really is a high-class cockpit, particularly for a 39-footer. You can apparently seat about 10 people around here. The table opens out, of course, and slides on its base as well. If I give that a little tug in my direction, as you can see, even if I'm sitting over on the starboard side at this bench, I'm well serviced. It's a really effective piece of work there. Beautiful table. This is teak. Not solid teak, there's ply inside it, but you get at least, I think, a 4mm veneer, so you can sand that back if you like. You can also impregnate it with magnets. That's optional, because it's quite an expensive option, more than 2,000 euros, I think. So that when you get yourself a set of magnetised glasses and plates, they'll sit still even when the boat's rocking about. I really like the storage in here too. All one-handed, as you'd expect. As you can see, we've got undercuts in the cushion all the way around, so you can just lift those up. There's the cushion there for the infill here. You can turn this entire space into a huge extra double bed for your guests. And that's particularly useful, actually, because as you can see, you can cordon this entire section off as a private bedroom, and because we've got the galley in here, access to the other cabins down there, and access out onto the side deck through that skipper's side door, it means that you can get up from the main cabins, go to the pontoon, make your breakfast, sit down and relax, read a paper without disturbing anyone in here. And of course you can get curtains for these canvases as well, just to give you that extra bit of privacy. But back to the storage. I haven't quite finished with that yet, because I'm quite impressed with it. Another big one-handed section here, beautifully lined, really huge space. Further forward, I think we've got another good space, this time with the table, for the aft swim platform, for that little coffee station at the back end out there. And on the starboard side, well, lots more of the same. Life jackets in there, and this is something that Espen's particularly proud of here at Marex, is the fact that we've got a couple of bins in this section. It's very deliberate. He wants the bins to be close to the galley, but not on the inside of of the saloon. He wants it outside just so you don't get any smells or mess. That makes loads of sense. And something else I like is the fact that if I open up these storage spaces again, you'll see that the base of these cabinets is about 10 centimetres lower than the deck level, which creates lots of useful extra volume. And as we'll see in a second, when I open up this hatch here, it doesn't in any way get in the way of the space down in the engine bay. Crack that open, you see how cavernous that is. We just climb down into the space. Automatically lights when you lift that hatch. Huge bit of checker plate there, loads of space for you to move around. And particularly on this boat, because we have the stern drive version rather than the V drives. Top rated engines, Volvo Penta D6 440s here. You can have the 320s as well for about 32 knots, but this will apparently see you to about 41 knots. There's a calorifier over there on the port side. As I say, loads of space. The wiring is very beautifully done indeed, as you'd expect from Marex. And there's loads of space here for a gyro and a generator. And of course, if you go for an electric hob rather than the gas stove that this boat has, you'll need that. And that'll add a bit of weight, reduce your top end by 3 or 4 knots, I would think. But it's still an option most buyers, particularly in Britain, are likely to take. As you'd expect from Marex, the detailing is really strong too. For a start, we've got this Alcantara finish. Apparently 90% of Marex customers will go for that, and advisedly so. Not only does it look and feel quite luxurious, but it's also really good for residual values on these boats because it looks after itself very well. Really good to clean up. Cleans up an absolute treat, very stain resistant. Cup holders, which is nice to see, one at each corner. This is nice. We've got some ambient LED lighting beneath these solid teak rails, and this is something I really enjoy. Now, forever and a day, Marex has been a big fan of corner seats. It seems to think that everyone gravitates towards them quite naturally. And of course, we have 4 in here, one at each corner, but we've got an additional one here. If we open up this transom gate and just pop this little retainer into place to keep it nice and tight, well, there you have it, 5 corners in a square. How's that for a magic trick? Really nice touch that. We've seen that on the 440 and I like it a lot. I like this too. Huge overhead sunroof, manually operated, very easy to do, nothing to go wrong. And what I also like, apart from the fact that we've got a little extensions to the superstructure moulding so you can sit out here underway, one on either side and stay nice and sheltered, is the fact that, well, you can integrate these spaces so effectively. If I just pop into the saloon for a sec and hit this button, you'll see that this partition on the port side starts to come down. I don't have to babysit that. One hit on the switch is quite enough. You can just let it get on with its work. And that makes it particularly valuable that there is an option, as there is on the 440, for a second helm here. Because when the sun's shining and the party's going on out here, up to 10 people, as I say, you don't want to be going inside if you need to make a bit of distance. So it's nice that the skipper can stay involved right at the heart of proceedings. And that's nearly down now, as you can see. And when we step in, well, it's quite a simple arrangement, but it's a very attractive one. Again, a really big dinette on the inside there. A galley butting up against that helm seat on the starboard side. We'll take a quick look at this dinette first. As you can see, it's relatively low slung, but plunging windows means you get very good views. A relatively low level dash means you get good views forward too. No storage under there because this, of course, generates a bit of extra volume for the mid cabin. We'll see that in a minute. We do get a couple of stools that just swing out so you can seat as many as perhaps 6 to 8 people here, and a table that opens up. Again, this is teak, but interestingly, the decking here it looks quite similar to teak, but actually the grain's subtly different. This is steamed ash, which is a wood that Marex has used quite a lot over the last 20-25 years. Looks fantastic. In the back end of the unit, we do have a good size of fridge though. That's 100 litres. And that's something that this kind of has in common with the larger 440, is the capacity to store loads of food for relatively long trips. Another couple of fridges, each of those 110 litres, so 320 litres in total, is really very generous indeed. As you can see, the galley itself is relatively high as well, about 94 centimetres this worktop instead of the conventional 87, so you've got lots of volume down in there. Here's the gas hob we spoke about, just 2 rings. You can have 4 if you prefer, and as I say, you can have an electric hob, an induction one, if you spec the generator down in that engine room. Decent bit of work surface, some cup holders, and a good size of sink. Bit of high level storage here as well. And this is rather clever too. If I just look up, undo a couple of catches here, down comes a nice big flat screen TV for you to watch from the port side very naturally. And you can also angle that out towards the occupants of the cockpit. So it's a really well thought out piece of design, that, and it means you don't have to waste any space sinking it into the back end of the work surface there, as most designers tend to. Now if we face forwards again and move towards the helm, you'll see we've got an oven built into the unit beneath the helm seat, and this is a really lovely helm station, I've got to say. We'll take a closer look at that when we get out, but for the moment what we'll do is fold up this leaf of the table, get these little stools out of the way, and reverse this backrest so we can see what the co-pilot position is all about, because on the Marex 440 is a superb spot. No space on this boat for a door on the port side. What we do get though is room for 2 people, a nice angled foot brace, cushions right along the back there so you can face inboard. Again, nestled in a corner, look inboard towards the skipper while you're underway. It's a very comfy spot. And this is rather lovely too. A nice solid teak table that snaps up into position. Nice and big, so you can do a bit of work, a bit of chart work maybe even, while you're underway. Now let's make our way down towards the cabins. As you'd expect, this is a 2-cabin boat with a single heads compartment. Bow cabin up forward, of course, the midships cabin here with the access point on the port side, and to starboard we've got the heads compartment. We'll just nip into there first. As on the 440, we've got frosted glass panels on the doors just to allow the light to flow properly. And we've got lovely big lofty entry point. If I spin the camera around and let you see how it comes on me, it's a good 6 inches above my head and I'm a 6-footer, so you don't have to stoop to get in. And when we're in here, it's a decent size, I've got to say. Nicely laid out too, separate toilet, vanity unit, plenty of storage again, a bit of high level storage as well, and a kind of panel up top with ambient lighting that feels more like a kind of natural skylight. It's a very effective piece of design, that too. And I like the shower compartment too. It's a really good size, plenty of vertical height, artificial teak deck and seat, which makes good sense. And this is particularly pleasing. No messing around with curtains or folding doors. This simply snaps shut on good sturdy runners. Really effective solution, that. Let's nip out across to the port side, the entry point there. As you can see, we actually do have a proper skylight up top, kind of mirrors the one in the heads compartment. That's huge. That's on the dash top just ahead of that co-pilot seat. Really works well, even on a dull day like today. Nice big mirror there. Again, more ambient backlit LEDs. And an absolutely vast storage unit at the entry point. Huge drawers. And I really like these catches too. These are new for Marex. They're kind of broad, easy to hit. You can't really miss it. And they're made from metal, which is rather pleasant. I always find it slightly disappointing when you come on a boat that costs the best part of £1 million and you've got cheap little plastic catches. But that looks superb. Feels good too. And if I just close the door over, again, we've got frosted glass in there. So you've got a nice big mirror there. Nothing behind that because that's used for the forward cabin, as we'll see in a second. But we do have additional storage here, some shelving inboard and some hanging storage there. Plunges away quite nicely, so it's bigger than it actually looks. And if I just stoop down and look beneath the mouldings for that dinette up on the port side of the saloon, well, there's a nice long settee here on the port side, right next to that sort of plunging hull window for lovely views. It's nicely thought through, that. Plenty of headroom there as well, plus a reading light and power point. And the bed itself is massive, pretty much square, 2 metres by 2 metres. So you can sleep fore and aft or inboard, whichever direction suits you. Bit of storage up there, another one of those windows. Microfiber linings on the deck head, just absorbs the noise. Feels a little bit more luxurious, and more reading lights at the head end and power points. And actually, I'm just going to clamber in here, take a seat on this bench. and spin the camera around to show you the kind of perspective we're looking at. Loads of headroom, as I say, directly next to the window, and another neat little reading light here. But while I'm here, it's worth having a look at this stuff too. The lining on this bulkhead, I've not seen Marex use this before. It's very attractive, quite soft to the touch, and it kind of mimics the pattern you see in the Seine when the tide has receded. So it's semi-nautical as well, I guess. Looks lovely. So let's move further forward now and take a look at the bow cabin, which I would assume a lot of people would use as the master cabin, although you wouldn't feel particularly shortchanged if you picked the mid cabin instead. And here we are. The bed's nice and raised, so we've got 4 good storage units under there. And because they've raised it away from the deepest part of the V, we've got a decent bit of breadth as well. Access on both sides of the bed. Decent size of hull windows, high level storage. Entirely symmetrical in this part of the boat, so we've got mirrored cabinets hanging storage on both sides. And another storage unit just here. This is the cabinet behind that mirror that we spotted in the forward part of the mid cabin there. More of this rather lovely bulkhead lining. And again, I'll spin the camera around just to illustrate how much height I have in here. You could be 6'6" and still not struggle with this at all. Plenty of room at the head end as well if you want to sit up in bed. So in terms of the ergonomics, it works very well indeed. Now we've got the top end engine option on this boat, a pair of D6 440s stern drives. The base option, of course, the one we saw at the show, that's a pair of D4 320s. Apparently that's good for around about 32 knots. But we've already had a play with this, and we're seeing in the region of 41 knots, which is quite a bit of pace for a boat that feels kind of this heavily built and high quality. This is like a 13-ton boat light, so it's a substantial piece of equipment. And as we just move through the gears very slowly, what are we doing now? About 6 or 7 knots. You'll notice I'm not having to play around with the wheel, I'm not having to correct and overcorrect. It's very stable, excellent directional tracking. And as we push on again, I'll just dip those legs a touch. Well, we move on to the plane without much in the way of bow lift, I've got to say. We're doing 20 knots now. But actually, in terms of efficiency, I think this boat enjoys a little bit more than that. We've noticed that at around about 23, 24 knots, you're running at 3.5 litres per mile. Now we've got a fuel tank of around about 870 litres, so saving 20% redundancy, 700 litres to play with. It gives us a 200-mile range. And what's particularly impressive is the fact that this Marex is not in the slightest bit mean with its cruising band. You can increase that, as I will now, right the way through to 33, 34, 35 knots. And you're still only seeing a fuel flow of around about 3.75 litres per mile, which is a tiny incremental difference on 24 knots. So essentially, you can travel at all kinds of speeds, whatever way suits your occupants or the sea conditions, and enjoy a range very close to 200 miles. And what else you can enjoy, and this is particularly notable because we've been kind of misbehaving with this boat a little bit this morning, and there's a bit of a chop running around, some fairly brisk breezes, is the fact that at no stage have we had to use our windscreen wipers for anything other than the rain. In terms of dryness, the splash deflection is really excellent. We'll just spin her around to starboard and put on the gas a little bit. There's some really good grunt, I've got to say, when you put the levers down. Some nice heel. We're running across the swells here, but it's very composed. And there's a nice little bit of slip dialed in. So it's not like you're gripping all of a sudden and headbutting a window. It's very relaxed and user-friendly. And that's by no means an accident. What they try to do here is just shallow the hull angles a touch. There's a reasonably fine entry and a decent flare, as I mentioned, but the planing surface is relatively shallow because what they want to do is generate running efficiency, generate an easy riding boat, a boat that's easy to drive for a novice. And that's exactly what they've achieved with this. We're running with the Caesar touch now. We'll just trim her out and push on a little, up to 39, 40 knots. And I'm quite buoyed by the fact that even though this is a very mature and grown-up piece of equipment, well, it really does handle a bit. You can adjust the pitch in whatever way you fancy and in whatever way the seas demand. And as I've already illustrated, you can throw her into a turn, enjoy a really good bit of heel, a nice kind of combination, a nice kind of balance between the grip and the slip, and throw her around like a much smaller, less civilized boat. And actually, two other things that definitely need mentioning in relation to this boat. Well, one is the refinement. You can't expect that from Marex, but at no point today, in spite of the chop and the bluster and the fact that we were hammering along with 41 knots, at no point did we see decibel readings extend beyond the 70s and into the 80s. So that's very welcome indeed, particularly on a long cruise. And the other thing I want to mention, and this really goes to show how carefully Marex thinks about the designs of its boats, is the fact that back there on that transom gate we've got a little glazing panel being built into the bottom end of that. So when I'm parking my boat and I come in astern to the pontoon, I can see exactly where the end of the swim platform is in relation to the place I'm trying to park.
And there you have it then. That is the new Marex 390. And frankly, if you enjoyed the award-winning flagship, the 440, and why wouldn't you, then you're definitely going to enjoy this, because it does a great many of the same things, gives you the same order of experience on a smaller, more affordable, more manageable platform. It's thoughtfully designed, it's beautifully built, it's a lot of fun to drive, and actually I'd have to say it's probably the most sociable 40-foot cruiser it's ever been my pleasure to review. Now, whether you agree with that or not, please do leave your comments in the section below. As ever, we'd love to hear from you. If you've enjoyed this video, hit the like button, and if you want to see more videos like this in the future, then make sure you subscribe to the Motorboat and Yachting channel.